In discussions with National Park Service, we came up with a cooperative idea between Grand Canyon Railway and the National Park Service to stage a locomotive on static display at the south rim of the Grand Canyon, right next to the historic train depot. The National Park Service was looking for an interpretive theme to go along with the historic South Rim train depot, one of the oldest log depot buildings in the United States. The Locomotive 29 is a 1906 Alco steam engine, and between the National Park Service and Grand Canyon Railway, we thought it would be a great interpretive message to have up there. Plus, when there's no train at the South Rim depot, it would also let people know that there was a train operating between somewhere and the Grand Canyon, and would hopefully spike their curiosity to ask more questions about what the train was there for and how they could get to ride a train.
The actual move itself, once we got the consist all switched and prepared for what we were going to take, the equipment that we were taking, it took about 3.5 hours for the one-way trip to get it up there, and then another hour or so to get the 29 moved and the tank cars all positioned, and then a couple more hours to clean up the mess from all the oil that we used to lubricate it to get it up there, but we didn't want all that oil being unsightly or dripping on the ground and things. So once we got it up there, then we cleaned all that mess back up again to make it so that once it's more presentable on display, put whatever few parts that we had to take off of it for the move back on it, and then bring the rest of our consist back home, the tank car and the engine and everything like that. So yeah, ended up being a good full 10-hour day or so, I believe, by the time we were all said and done. This is a lot different than just moving it a mile here, a mile there, and just moving it back and forth. So we brought it over here to the shop, we put it over the pit, we took a look at all the bearings from underneath, made sure everything has good lubrication, and the automatic lubricators, we checked those out, make sure that those were working, filled those up with oil, or at least enough oil in order to make us 60 miles, greased all the bearings, and then we also, because we're taking it out on the main line, we had to make sure that it had functioning brakes, so we had to test out the air system and make sure that the brakes were functional and make sure that get all those bugs worked out. And then as far as dragging it that distance, steam locomotives, when the pistons go back and forth, you depend on the steam itself in order to help break that oil down. It's a high temperature oil and it's very viscous, almost like a molasses base. And it needs that temperature from the steam in order to liquefy that, in order to make it spread out throughout the cylinder and get proper lubrication everywhere. So without having steam on the locomotive, that oil doesn't really work as well. So what we decided we needed to do is we removed the pistons altogether, so when we dragged it up to the canyon, we wouldn't have a piston dragging back and forth in a dry cylinder. We removed the piston altogether, so the rods are still connected to the engine and the rods still go back and forth, but the pistons themselves were removed, so we had to remove those out of the locomotive, and then we took some of the steps off the front and things to keep people from being able to climb on it, and just made sure everything was buttoned up in the cab and things, just for security issues and stuff like that. All of that took basically about a week to do that before we took it up to the park. Obviously, first choice for all of the steam lovers would be to see her run, but that not being an option, having her outdoors on public display where at least she can be a good interpretive museum piece, and because she is complete and all the important parts are still there, it's a lot different than a lot of other museum pieces where you might see for a locomotive that hasn't run in 50, 60, 75 years, and a lot of the parts have been stripped off of her and a lot of the parts have rusted out and she's been halfway junked and she's heavily rusted. 29 is for the most part a complete locomotive, and it provides a much better display than 539, let's say, which has a nice coat of paint on it, but it's missing a lot of the very important parts. And you get to see with her a little bit of what a steam locomotive is like, but you don't get to see a complete locomotive ready to run, and 29 really fits that bill a lot more than a lot of other locomotives that you're going to see in the museums.
To have a real live locomotive up there that could at any time be commissioned and put back into service, it's a fully operational steam engine that's on static display, is very important.